as makers, we need materials to create with. And a love of beautiful textiles is often part of why we got into sewing in the first place. But as residents of a planet experiencing a climate and ecological crisis, we need to be mindful of what we're consuming and how much. So is there a way to indulge in fabric purchasing that's also in line with what's best for our planet? My guest this week, Judith Staley, has recently implemented a system for herself that is backed by research called the Rule of Five, and it could be the answer for all of us. We also talk about Judith's personal challenge to track everything she wore in 2024, and she shares what surprising and valuable insights she gleaned from it. So stick around a couple of minutes and we'll explore all of that. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 16 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis, and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. Hi, lovely listener, how are you doing? Thanks so much for coming back to the show after the 2-week break we just had. I missed you. And bam, we're straight into a new mini-series. Over the next 4 episodes, we're going to be exploring the topic of fabric stash reduction from a bunch of different angles. But first, have you had any sustainability wins over the last couple of weeks? So during the Easter break, I finally sorted out something that has been on my list to do for yonks. So like many people, for years I've had mobile phone contracts that allow you to get a new handset every couple of years. And of course, a brand new smartphone with all the resources, energy and labour that they take to create, let alone the e-waste that your old phone then becomes, every couple of years is obviously not sustainable. I've been wanting to switch over to a SIM-only contract for a long time, but I had some problems accessing my account that became a barrier to me sorting out quickly every time that I previously tried. Anyway, I finally just sat myself down, worked through the issues with my account, weighed up my options and switched over to a SIM-only contract. So I won't be replacing my 2-year-old phone. I'm just going to keep this one going for as long as possible instead. Another plus is that I'm now paying about £10 less a month, so that is also great. I also have a great sustainability idea for you that a lovely Check Your Thread patron named Ree recently shared with me. So following on from the discussion that Kate Roberts and I were having in episode 178, the most recent episode, about what to do with old toiles and muslins, Ree said that they have been using their old toiles to make reusable produce bags. Isn't that an awesome idea? You can make them in different sizes depending on the items that you buy loose or in bulk. And of course you can seam panels of fabric together if necessary. They'd probably make really good gifts as well, don't you think? I definitely plan to make some produce bags from my old toiles for when I visit the refill shop. Thanks so much for that idea, Ree. Thanks also to Annie, Donna and Brooklyn for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon. It is no exaggeration when I say that I could not make this podcast without the financial support from patrons. I'm committed to keeping this podcast ad-free. So if you enjoy seeing new episodes of Check Your Thread popping into your feed, please consider signing up by visiting patreon.com/checkyourthread. Think of it like buying me a cup of coffee each month. But if the cost of a cup of coffee each month is too much right now, you can sign up for literally any amount that makes sense for you. Thanks for considering it. So let's get on with this episode. I'm so happy to be bringing you this conversation with Judith and opening up this topic because I know that wanting to buy beautiful fabric can feel at odds with the goals that some of us have around reducing consumption. And that can lead to feelings of guilt. This approach offers up a pragmatic solution to that. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So next week, we'll be hearing from lots of people who have mindfully reduced their fabric stashes and we'll hear what worked for them. So until then, take care of yourself and those in the global community that need our help. Consider making some produce bags from your old toiles and enjoy. Can you believe it's been like 3 years since we last spoke?
No, I can't believe that.
I know, it's wild, isn't it? Because you were on episode 38 about your pledge and participation in Me Made May. And before that, it was episode 12 back in 2021 when you were talking about the Sew Over 50 community.
That felt like a big gap between the two to me, but obviously it wasn't that big. And what episode is it now then?
I've just released 166.
Still, that's fine. There's so many more interesting people out there with things to say.
I don't know where the time's gone.
I know.
So it's been a while. So would you please remind us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
Okay. I'm Judith Staley, on Instagram at Judith Rosalind. That's the only place I am on social media. Many years ago, 6 years ago, I started So Over 50, which I ran for 4 years or so, but I've sort of handed over now to Sandy and the team. I'm still a little bit involved, but I'm not involved on a day-to-day basis. I live in Edinburgh. I'm a granny. I sew my own clothes, but I'm involved in a few things locally, like the Water of Leith Conservation Trust. We do litter picking and river upkeep, volunteer in a repair cafe and a local community garden and a community climate choir. I sing in a climate choir at the local community garden. So,
amazing. They've all got kind of sustainability and ecological repair and what have you involved. Nice.
My favourite ones are actually and also do Edinburgh street stitching, which is, we go out and stitch in the street to, just hope people engage with us about mending, repairing. But my favourite ones are all to do with being outdoors, really.
Amazing. So you've been busy doing some experiments related to sewing and clothing and sustainability. So thanks so much for giving us some of your time so we can learn from you. We're going to talk about the wardrobe tracking project that you undertook last year. But first, I want to get into the Rule of 5 endeavour. So I'd like to know more broadly what that's about and what your interpretation is of it. So can you remember where you first heard of the Rule of 5 and how you initially felt about it?
Yeah, well, I think I probably first heard about it through Gemma Metherington, Elephant in My Wardrobe, who I follow on Instagram. I think that must be, because that's where I hear about a lot of things. So I think that's how I first heard about Tiff Darke, who started this challenge, Rule of 5. And I think that was at the beginning of last year. I look back through my Instagram post. The first time I mentioned it was on a post I did 15th of January when I was prompted by one of your podcasts, the mini-series on fabric stash. And I was looking at my stash and assessing what I'd bought and made in the previous year, which was I'd bought 10 pieces of fabric and I'd made 20 new garments for myself in that year, 13 from new fabric, 7 from stash. And I was shocked that I'd done that many, because I don't feel I sew at an alarming rate now like I used to. I feel I have big gaps when I don't sew. So I was just astounded how many I'd made. And I've been reading the figures from WRAP, W-R-A-P, I can't remember what that stands for, that 75% of garments are not worn after 6 months.
Wow.
Generally in the UK. And an average British person doesn't wear 25% of their clothing.
Wow.
But I know I wear my clothes a lot. I keep them going far longer than 6 months, years. But it just made me think about my wardrobe and what I was adding to it. So I'd seen the Rule of 5, which I'll explain in a minute. But I was also sort of thinking that I think I'd put in that post, actually, that I've got a full wardrobe of clothes. I'm 68, and I was thinking, so I'm hoping those clothes are going to last me for the next 20 years. Then I thought, by which time I'm going to be 88, and I just thought, I don't need more clothes. I don't need more clothes. I've got enough to last me. So I really wanted to do something about controlling that.
Right. So let's define the Rule of 5. So as many people will have heard, the UN and other organisations have the ambition to keep the rise of global temperatures below 1.5 degrees by 2030 compared to pre-industrial temperatures. Scientists have ascertained that that is the threshold beyond which we can expect lots of irreversible, catastrophic climate events.
Yeah.
So the Hot and Cool Institute, which is a Berlin-based climate think tank, they looked into what the fashion industry was doing and saw that it was really lacking if that ambition of 1.5 degrees was going to be met. And despite a lot of efforts in the fashion industry to be more sustainable in garment production, the reason the clothing industry is going to fail miserably to meet those targets is because of the sheer volume of what is being produced. Currently, apparently, 100 billion items of clothing are made a year, 60% of which are basically plastic. Not good. So the Hot and Cool Institute did some maths, and they worked out that the production and consumption levels need to fall to about the equivalent of 5 new items of clothing per person per year. So obviously, for your purposes, you decided to swap out the 5 new garments for 5 new lengths of fabric to sew your own clothes.
Yeah.
So I think of you as a really mindful and responsible consumer. So like, what made you feel like, that you needed to do that? Just because of the stats that you ran about your previous year's making?
Yeah, the fact that I did feel, I buy mostly natural fibres. I love linen and wool, a bit of cotton. I buy some secondhand fabric, but I do buy new fabric. And and I had, over the years, I've done different things to slow down, and I only buy fabric with something in mind, a garment in mind. I don't buy fabric just because I like it, like I used to years ago. I'd see something on Instagram, a beautiful pattern, and I'd buy the fabric and not have any plans for it. So over the past few years, I've only bought fabric when I have a plan in mind, and I might not make it immediately that year, but I do have a garment in mind. I have tried different things to slow down, and I keep an eye on my stash and everything. But obviously I was still making a lot of garments because, I love clothes. I love making things. We all just sort of been brought up thinking of something new, wanting something new in your wardrobe, and also even, I'm not on Instagram for likes, but it does affect you. And it does get into your brain. And, when you put new things on, new bright things, you get more likes. And I'm not in it for that, but I can't help that.
But then it generates conversation and a sense of community as well. There's lots of
that's
other
right.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So for all those reasons, I thought I'm still producing too much, for what I want, the impact I want to have on. Yeah. And also you participated in the I've forgotten what it was called, but not buying any fabric.
Yeah, last so standing, yeah.
Yes, that's right. And, that's been going for a few years, and I've admired everybody who's done that. But I just didn't think that was for me. I thought I'd just want to really bring down my consumption because there's also that thing about, you're taking the joy out of sewing or buying and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's about finding a balance, isn't it?
Yeah. That one just really spoke to me.
Absolutely. So what were the rules that you set yourself? Like, were you allowed to buy secondhand fabric on top of these 5 things, or otherwise acquire existing textiles?
Yeah. My rule for myself was 5 pieces of new fabric, bought in a shop that was newly made, wasn't secondhand. So that was my rule. So I could buy secondhand fabric, but actually I've not been doing that. And I don't buy clothes, really. I've bought the odd T-shirt, perhaps one T-shirt, a couple of T-shirts over the past few years, but I don't buy new clothes. But I can buy secondhand garments, which again I don't do very often. But last year I bought a vintage skirt, which was a huge success, and a dress which I haven't altered to fit me yet, so that wasn't such a success. But my rule was 5 lengths of new fabric, and I couldn't sort of cheat by buying 10 meters of something. It was a reasonable amount for a garment.
For what your project needed, yeah.
Yeah. So I decided that in January, knowing that the following month I was going to Rye to Merchant and Mills for a retreat. And that is where I buy all my fabric. Over the years, I've discovered if I buy fabric there, it's just what I want. They've got the colours. And I go there once a year usually, so I can feel it. So I knew I was going there in February, and previous years I bought a lot more than 5 pieces of fabric. Not huge amounts, but more than that. So I thought I knew that really I was going to buy my fabric in February. I was going to buy those 5 lengths of fabric that next month. And I know TIFF's rules are different. It's spreading over a year and, buying one garment every couple of months or something. But I just knew I'm going to be there in that shop, and that's where I'll buy my pieces of fabric.
But you know yourself and you know what you like. So why wouldn't you adapt it to work for you?
Yes, that's right. And, people said, oh, you'll never do it. But I know if I set my mind to something, I will do it, if I really set my mind to something. And so I did just buy 5 pieces of fabric in February.
And they were all from the Merchant and Mill store?
They were all from Merchant Mills, but I did buy something else. I did buy what I knew then that I was going to buy another length of fabric later in the year. So I did buy 6, not 5, because I'd bought a 5 and I tried a sample on of a dress that I wanted to make, and I wanted to buy that fabric because I just loved the weight of it, and it wasn't coming out until later in the year.
Right.
So I decided, okay, it's going to be 6 this year, not 5, but it's still, yeah.
That's still fantastic. So what pieces did you buy? Can you remember?
Hang on a sec. I've got my other notebook over here.
I love how you're so organised and you've got notes and stats for everything.
I know. This notebook, I tried for years to keep a record of everything I'd bought and made, and just didn't do it. You know, I had different methods of doing it. But then I started just sketching and drawing. I started this notebook where I draw what I've made.
Aww.
And that has just made me, I just love it. As soon as I finish making something, I can go and draw a picture of it and colour it in.
That's so nice. That's like another aspect to your creativity.
Yeah. So I've kept that up to date. So I've got a list of the fabrics here. I bought an Indian block print, a blue Indian cotton with flowers, and I made a Corley shirt for that. I love it.
Gorgeous.
Another Indian cotton, cocoa pearl brown with little pearl buttons and embroidery on, and I made a top for that, but I've got to alter it. Doesn't quite fit right at the neck, but I wore that quite a lot. What was that material? Oh, a beautiful Japanese check cotton poplin, quite really dense, and I made the Matilde skirt out of that, which I've worn a lot. That's 1, 2, 3. I bought some oilskin to make a Landgate jacket, particularly for my litter picking, a brand new jacket. For that, so I've got my parka, which is very warm, and I've got coats which are too smart for doing that. I just needed some. So, but I haven't made it yet. But I'm going back to Rye in February, so I'm taking that with me to make there. And then the fabric that I bought later in the year was a heavy wool linen, and I made the scout dress, a beautiful green. And I also bought, when I was there last year, some brown linen wool for a scout, but I've not made that yet. I thought I'll wait and see if I wear this dress a lot, and if not, I might make a different dress. So that's where I am. I've made 4 of the pieces, and I've still got 2.
But that's brilliant. But you've got plans for all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you say that you bought some secondhand bits of fabric as well, or you allowed yourself?
No, I haven't.
But you didn't end up doing it.
I was allowed to. I think I may have bought. Actually, I've probably bought a couple of embroidered tablecloths or something, but I might end up donating those back, because I just think I only need so many embroidered tablecloth blouses. One I've got, which I love, so I might donate that back. But the other thing I decided to do was, because a feeling of missing out of all this beautiful fabric that you see and other things, I thought there'd be loads of fabric that I would want to buy during the year and regret not being able to buy. So I started a list of fabrics that I'd like to maybe buy next year, or garments that, and the garment that I wanted to make out of it. And actually, I've only got 3 things on the list.
Right.
And I'm not so bothered about making them. So, that shows that I might have bought those.
Yeah.
In another year, I would have bought them, and I would have bought more besides. But having written them down, ready to perhaps to buy, because I'm going to Rye in February. So it's good to have an idea of what I want, if there's anything I need to make or want to make, to have an idea of the fabric. So I started that list, and I could sort of take it or leave it what's on it. So I've got to reassess that. But that was a really good thing to do, to be able to not think, oh, I'm missing out on all this lovely fabric.
Yeah. That's something actually we were talking about in recently in the Check Thread Patreon community chats. We were talking about, just making a note of your ideas, however you do that, whether that's literally written. I have an app, I use the app Trello, and I literally just make a note, and sometimes, it's like that idea's not going anywhere, it's preserved.
Yeah.
And it's just creating that pause, and then it's like maybe those ideas will bubble up to something that, you really do want to make it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, oh, that was a nice idea, and I hope that somebody makes it, but it doesn't have to be me for my wardrobe, you know?
And it's also when you see, you see on Instagram things that people have made and that you really love, or new fabric reviews, and you think, oh, I want to make that. And then you give it time. It's like, it's like, when I was younger, shopping for clothes, going and seeing something in the shop, you couldn't buy it straight away. So you'd think about it for a few weeks till you could afford it. And then, maybe you wouldn't buy it in the end because, if you buy things straight away, then you haven't given yourself time to think about it.
Yeah, some people have like the 48-hour rule and things like that, don't they?
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So did you do any sewing last year using pieces of fabric that you'd brought from previous years?
Yes. So I've assessed what I've made last year. And, I bought the 6 pieces of fabric, 13.9 meters of fabric I bought. And I made 4 from the new fabrics, and I made 7 from my stash.
Right.
So I still made 11 new garments, which just really surprises me that I've made so many. And then I've got 5 from charity shop or repurposed. So some, but again, from my stash, or something I've repurposed from a garment that I'd already made a previous year that I've taken apart and remade.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping year by year that figure will come down. But I have got fabric in my stash, so either I get, I pass that on to somebody else, which I will do a bit of that. But when I have the urge to make something, I've got some fabric there. It's not my top choice, because my top choice would be brand new fabric from Merchant of Mills. But there's things, obviously I've bought them in the past, so there's something about them I liked.
So something that I noticed, an aspect of the Tiffanie Darke's version, with her rule, she allows herself 5 new garments and 4 second-hand garments. I wasn't sure what that was about, because I was thinking, because there's so much existing textiles in the world, isn't there? You'd think it was pretty much fair game. But then I was wondering, if there was the limit that she created for the second-hand clothes, if you were doing the clothing version, obviously, if that was maybe in terms of habit change,
Yes.
If you're just swapping out your overconsumption of new things for overconsumption of second-hand things,
that's right.
Is that really actually encouraging any kind of habit change? So I was wondering if that was where she was coming from.
I wonder, because that definitely is a thing, isn't it? That people are, vinted or whatever, they're just, yeah. Because I worry about that if occasionally when there are things that I've sold through a charity shop, because I have a charity shop locally that has sold some of my things, or occasionally on Instagram or something, it's, will that be worn a lot? Will that be worn a lot by that person, or are they just going to wear it a couple of times and get rid of it? And then that's the same as if you just thrown it away. Yeah,
that's why it's always better if you can to get a garment or unwanted item into the hands of someone that a specific person, but obviously that's not always possible, is it? So do you think that okay, so 2 questions. Has the 5 or the 6 lengths, as it turned out to be, is that something you're doing in 2025?
Yes. I definitely won't buy more than 5. Yes, I'm definitely going to continue it year by year, keep that number down. But maybe, I don't know, I've got to think about before I go to Rye. I don't want to buy 5 just for the sake of it. So it may be this year that I only buy a couple of pieces while I'm there, and that, for projects, and that I might buy something later in the year, or might not. Because, it's really it has really broken that habit of wanting to buy. Yeah.
So you feel like you have made some kind of mindset changes over the last year?
Definitely.
What's really struck me, because I was listening to Tiffanie Darke on a podcast called the Enoughness podcast.
Okay.
And something that really interested me, that really kind of made me think, it's as you were saying, it's not last so standing. It's not a fabric ban. You can buy either garments or... It's not a buying ban. It's just a reduction, and so you can browse your favourite fabric shops. You can go online or in real life, and you can imagine those new projects and have that fun of kind of if I bought that fabric, what pattern would I make, or is there a gap in my wardrobe? So it doesn't really exclude that. It doesn't need to feel like you're being what's the word?
Yeah. You're not denying yourself. You're not being.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you're not being denied. Yeah, but what
Yeah.
is the freaking word?
I know. When I was sort of making notes for this, I was trying to think of a word, and I was saying to my husband, "What's the word?" And anyway, it was weakness. That my weakness, is for fabric. That's I don't have a weakness for buying shoes or buying things for the house or cars or whatever people have. It's mine is just fabric and making clothes. So that's my weakness, and I couldn't think of that word, weakness. So maybe it's just a very simple word that you can't remember.
I mean, you choose to specifically visit Rye, go to the Merchant Mills shop, and that's generally where you'll be buying your things because that's what works for you. But for somebody else taking on something like this, like they could do it more in the spirit of the way that Tiffanie Darke's recommending with, like buying something once every couple of months. Like a couple of months comes around quite quick.
It does.
And you can have that fun in the meantime of like checking out the websites, going on the newsletters and seeing what's coming up and unless it's something that's going to sell out immediately, like you could probably wait.
Yeah, I mean, I know with where I buy fabric that things tend not to sell out really quick. They tend to have sort of staples that last a long time. So I don't feel I've got to get in and buy it.
Yeah.
Or else it's going to go.
Yeah, yeah. And then the thing that I've learned for working for Fabric Godmother for 6 years, it's like there is always more nice fabric. Yes. There's always something that's going to capture your heart.
Yes, yeah. Definitely. And that, that was the risk of buying it all in February because, later down the year. But, over the years, I unsubscribed from a lot of fabric shops because I got tempted to buy things that really weren't me. So I unsubscribed to break that habit. But I don't feel I missed out because I know, yeah.
But you've been doing some real conscious work over recent years, haven't you, to define your style and work out what you like, and and that's a real strength. It's not.
Yeah, at 68, I finally know what I like to wear.
Let's hope for us all. Yeah, no, I love it. I love what you're doing. It makes just a whole load of sense, really. And in fact, I actually came up with a similar challenge myself, like kind of not in any way linked to this. I think it was probably about 3 years ago, because like last year I did Last Sew Standing, and then I think it was the year before I decided to limit my purchases to 6 items a year.
Oh,
and I think I did it for the same reason. Like I had stuff in my stash, but I didn't want to completely deny myself when something nice came along, because I do love fabric too. Yeah, unsurprisingly, and it worked well. It really did. So
good. Yes. Yeah. I just think it's nice to just pull back a bit and not be madly buying and producing. I just really, I just feel happier with that. What happened this year and what I've done. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Have you inspired other people, do you know, through posting?
I think, from I did a post a week or so ago about the wardrobe tracking, actually, and the rule of 5. I think more people have sort of been interested in the wardrobe tracking than the rule of 5. But I think there definitely are people. I don't want to stop people doing what they do. I'm not, no guilt thing, but I think we all inspire each other different ways, don't we? And I think some people are thinking along those lines.
Yeah, and you don't always know, do you? You can't always track like the impact that you're having.
And I didn't sign up to Tiff's rule of 5 because it's different with fabric, isn't it? Her rules weren't necessarily going to be applicable to mine, and I didn't go into it ever so deeply. I just saw that figure 5 and I just made that my own little challenge.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I'm going to be doing The Last Sew Standing again this year.
Oh, well done. Yeah,
because I've got basically the volume that I have in terms of space for my fabric has been dramatically reduced due to a leaky cupboard incident.
Oh, yes.
So it's got to fit in here. So, yeah. So it's not, I don't think that my consumption is wildly out of control at all, but I need to physically reduce the volume that my stash takes, and I like doing things in community, so I like the fact that other people will be doing something similar, but I think going forward 2026 I'm going to adopt the rule of 5 as well. I'll be with you. I'll be there with you next year. So Tiffanie was saying that underwear and hosiery don't count, but accessories do. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't replace my underwear very often. I'm not somebody who throws their underwear away.
But then once again, because I mean, some people love buying underwear, don't they? And I think you could easily then maybe,
yeah.
Go the other way and be like, that's your thing that you kind of not mindlessly consume, but perhaps overconsume.
Yeah. I started knitting socks this year, so I've
cool.
That's
slow, isn't it?
Socks count. That's slow.
Yeah.
And I've knitted myself a few pairs, and I've got yarn from where I volunteer at the makery. They get all these donations, which they don't really sell, but I just say, can I put a donation in and take that yarn because it looks like good sock yarn. But accessories, I don't tend to buy or make a lot of accessories anyway, so I didn't think about that. But if that didn't really come into it for me, but I think I would keep that out. If I needed a new bra, I would buy that. That's separate.
Yeah.
Separate to
I
my
think
rule.
for if Tiffanie Darke's her audience is probably more like the fashionistas, isn't it? So it's probably good that she does like, we're going to hold out on accessories a bit here, guys.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So do you have anything else, like any more conclusions or any more kind of like things you've learned or lessons or takeaways about your rule of 5?
Well, it sort of combines with the wardrobe tracking, really, the conclude, because I did them both last year.
Let's get on to that then.
Yes. So around the same time, I decided to do wardrobe tracking, and that was inspired by Wendy Ward. She puts a stitch into her garment every time she wears something, and I'd thought of doing that. Then I thought, no, I think I'll just do a tally. I was writing a diary last year, just a little page a day diary of. It was an account, the 1908 diary. I don't know if you've come across that.
No, what's that?
But by the knit nurse. She found this diary of, this isn't anything to do with sewing actually. She found this diary of somebody, Anna, who was aged about 30, lived in somewhere in the south of England, I can't remember, and a diary that she kept for a whole year. And each day she would post what Anna had written. And then she'd research stuff about, because it's around where she lives, and she would research stuff. It was really interesting. But so a few of us decided to do the same the following year, just write a page a day, not thoughts, but what you'd done, where you'd been, who you'd seen, what the weather had been like. So I decided to, at the bottom of that, to write what I'd worn.
Yeah.
So that was a way of recording what I'd worn. And then at the back of the diary, I just kept a little tally of, I wrote as I wore a garment, I wrote, and I just did a tally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, So that's how I recorded it. So when I went to bed each night, I'd write the diary and I'd write what clothes I'd worn. And sometimes, I'd just take them off. I'd have to look over at the pile because I'd forgotten what I'd worn. But anyway, I'd write, and so I keep a tally in the back of the diary, and then every 3 months I did a little, I did a post about it, but I did a calculation of what I'd worn those 3 months. So January to March, etc.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so that's how I worked that. And somebody asked me during it if I found I'd pushed myself to wear things I wouldn't normally have worn. So it's a bit like Me Made May, had you? And I said no, but having thought about it afterwards, I think, yes, I did. I mean, I just would wear what I would normally wear, but I did think, right, I haven't worn that, I need to wear that.
But I think when you're putting that slight little bit more scrutiny on your everyday actions, it's impossible not for there to be an impact on that, isn't it? To not be like a bit more aware of what you're reaching for. I think it would be impossible not to have that impulse,
Yeah. So then also whenever it was September-ish, August, September time, September probably, when I did a bit, because I do 2 changeovers a year in my wardrobe, get this summer clothes out and put the winter clothes away. Not, there's a lot of overlap, but there's some things that I only wear in summer and some things I only wear in winter. So when I did that, I then at that point wrote down all the clothes that hadn't been worn, because otherwise they would be missed. I wanted to know how many clothes I'd got altogether, and also how often they were worn and what I didn't wear. So I then produced this list with all these clothes that hadn't been worn over the year, and there's quite a lot, that haven't been worn. Where's my figures?
So I was going to say, because initially you were saying that there was the statistic that you read that 25% of our wardrobes don't get worn. What
Yeah.
was the 75% we only wear?
75% aren't worn after 6 months.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And then 25% doesn't get worn at all. Interesting. I'm wondering if your results, how they
Yeah.
fare
Well,
with
mine,
that.
right, let me find, where are the
I
figures?
love your statistics.
Yes, so what I found, I've got 176 garments.
Right. How does that compare to the UK average, I wonder?
I saw a figure, and I'll let you know. Oh, right, hot and cold suggest a sufficiency wardrobe of 74 items.
Wow.
So that's what it's a sufficiency wardrobe. That's what.
Is that including outerwear like jackets and coats?
Yes, I think so.
But maybe excluding undies?
I can't remember.
Right, I'll see if I'll go on their website and see if I can find it.
Yes, yeah. But I found I'd got 176 garments, but that's keeping things that I'm not wearing because I don't want to just get rid of them, so without a lot of thought. So last year I wore 101 of those garments.
Right.
But I've also got to figure 68 of which were worn regularly, more than a handful of times. So there's some things that I've just worn once or twice, which, they wouldn't be missed out of my wardrobe, I suppose. So I wore 68 clothes regularly, and that sort of quite matches with that 74 sufficiency wardrobe that Hot and Cold said. 68 and 74 aren't that different. So that I didn't include underwear or pyjamas, or actually swimming costume. I don't know if I wore a swimming costume last year anyway, or I think I did once. So outerwear and normal everyday wear, that 68 were worn regularly, 101 worn altogether. So that meant 75 garments were unworn. And so then it's, thinking about what to do about that.
How do you feel about those garments that didn't get worn?
Well, because that's the thing. I get this big overwhelm every time I swap my wardrobe over with how many clothes I've got, and I'm getting these clothes out each year and I'm not wearing them.
Yeah. Yeah, do you think that you're literally just doing this with those garments and that's their life, just being moved back and forth?
I know. So there are lots of conclusions during the year, but I've remade. So there was a summer dress that I loved, so it was to wear in hot climates, and I did have 2 hottish holidays last year, but because it's sort of strappy, I want to cover my shoulders. I don't want to be exposing my shoulders when it's really hot and sunny. So I've remade that dress into some shorts because I needed a pair of shorts, which again I won't wear very often in a year, but I just needed one, and rather than buy some new fabric. And something else I've remade. Oh, I had a linen duster coat that I'd made a few years ago, and I just wasn't wearing it. Something else had sort of taken that spot. So I've taken that apart and I'm making a dress out of that, feeding in some more bits of scraps and things. But
brilliant.
And my sister was staying with me, and she's got a pair of trousers and a T-shirt and sweatshirt set that I made that I wasn't wearing. So that, I feel good about rehousing that because I know she's going to wear them a lot. Yeah, so just looking at all the different things, I've got 9 cardigans that really, I used to have these fine wool cardigans that are lovely, but I just sort of don't wear them. They don't go with things at the moment. But I know if I put those in a charity shop, they would just, well, although the name Jigsaw would help, but they're just quite little. I think they would just disappear. They just wouldn't sell. So I'm just hanging on to them, because I think, well, I'm going to start wearing those again. And yeah, so there's things that I rediscovered a pair of culottes and a jumper that were ready to wear that I hadn't really worn for quite a few years, and I've worn those loads this year. So
interesting. It's hard to know, isn't it? It's like if you haven't worn something for a bit, do you get rid of it? But then, as you say, sometimes you can fall back in love with them and your style shifts slightly, or you've got another garment that now works well with them. And it's hard to know, isn't it? Like, do you pass it on because I haven't worn it for a year, or do you hang on to it? It's tough.
Yeah, I know. There's definitely things in my wardrobe I think, I don't know if I am going to wear that, but anyway, I've got a better idea of what to do with them. I'm not, I don't want to just dump them on the charity shop. So I'll have to.
Did you find the results surprising? I mean, I suppose you were kind of doing a summary throughout the year, so it wasn't like this big grand reveal at the very end.
Yes, I mean, let me look at my list of top 20 garments. Yes, there were surprises because 2 T-shirts, one was a ready-to-wear one from Toast in the sale that I bought a few years ago, and one that I'd made out of merino. They were both worn about 60 times each during the year. And I didn't realise I wore them that often. I tend to wear them, under things.
Yeah.
I don't very often wear those T-shirts as the only, but, under a dress or under another jumper. but yeah, they were. I was really surprised at that. When I add up all the coats that I've worn, coats and jackets, it doesn't look like there's a day when I wouldn't wear a coat. But
Well, you live in
some
Scotland.
days I wore more than one. You know, some days I've got a little jacket that I'll wear under a big coat, and some days I might have worn a jacket during the day and a coat in the evening if I was going out or something. So there are duplications there of things. You know, occasionally I get changed in the day, not very often, but occasionally I do. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The weather's changed, or you felt a bit nippy, and yeah.
yeah, and I was also surprised. I thought I wore dresses and skirts more often than it appears on here, but I think also it probably partly that I've got quite a few dresses and skirts.
Right.
So I've got more like trousers. There's sort of three or four pairs of trousers that I've worn a lot, and I don't have a lot of other trousers that I would wear. I mean, I've got others that I've got but I don't wear. Whereas the dresses and skirts, I've sort of got more choice of what to wear. Yeah, so each one doesn't get worn as often. And that means really I've got too many, because, we like making dresses, don't we? Dresses are so nice to make, aren't they? So I think they're so much easier than making trousers. So I think in the past I've made more dresses and skirts. And so that's why I've got a lot of choice. So I probably, if I counted up how many days I wore a skirt, it would be more than this list shows. Because there's more dresses and skirts. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get it. Yes. The individual items didn't get as much use, but you did wear them quite frequently.
Yeah, and they're not going. Those dresses aren't going anywhere. I still love them, and I'll still wear them. So, so I was thinking, is there a gap there, or if I'm buying fabric this year, is there a gap I need to fill? I mean, and there's not obviously a gap, but those two T-shirts, I think I'll need to keep an eye on those too, because they're
doing a lot of heavy lifting. I have something very similar. I have a black T-shirt that I made, and yeah, it looks so good under dungarees. It looks so good under like strappy dresses.
Yeah,
I use it all the time.
And it's also really has made me, more in touch with my wardrobe. And that's what Wendy said. You're sort of thinking about it more, handling it more, and getting to know your wardrobe better. And I don't do a lot of, some people try wearing things different ways. I don't do a lot of that. I tend to I know what I like together. I don't do a lot of swapping about, but just really appreciating what I've got, and realizing I don't need new things. It is nice to have the blouse that I made, because mostly I make things that are plain. I don't very often use patterned fabric, but the blouse, a blue Corley blouse that I made blue with this Indian cotton, it's lovely fabric, and that just feels right. When I wear that, I just think, oh, that's really a bit standout. A bit, it's nice to have one or two things like that. So I might look for a fabric like that to make another, just a standout sort of something that just feels a bit more special.
So would you recommend wardrobe tracking to the rest of us?
Yeah, I know it's not for everybody, because a lot of people say, oh, I couldn't be bothered, or I'd forget, but I think it's been really useful. For me, it's been really useful. I would recommend it. And obviously people do it different ways, Trello or those sort of different ways. Even taking a photograph every day, I suppose, it gives you an idea of what you've worn. But my little paper, just writing a tally, just worked. Yeah. Obviously, then you've got to search through your list to find, because my diary was just little, so the tally marks would get full up, and I'd have to start another one, and then I'd have to sort of look through the list.
So your advice is use a bigger notebook if you're going to do it.
Yes, a bigger notebook, and maybe do it in garments. Maybe do.
I was going to say, did you break it up in terms of garment type?
I didn't at that point. I didn't. I just did a whole long list, so it would be easier. When I've done my tally at the end of the 3 months, I've broken it up into different garment types, and that made it a bit easier. Yeah. So, but yes, I think it's worth doing.
I am fully convinced. In fact, I'm going to start doing it. It's not, unfortunately, I've missed the 1st of January, but tomorrow, whilst you're going off on your holiday, it's my husband's birthday. So I feel like that could be a good place to start for me and do a year, because I think this is fascinating.
That's right. A few people have said that. Oh, I've missed, but I'm going to just start. There's no point waiting until the next 1st of January.
Choose your birthday. Choose like Valentine's Day, like any day. Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be, it may be that, people might want to start, spring, But I've just started 1st of January. That's what, and I just did my 3-month things like that, January, February, March, because that is mostly winter, and then, a couple of summer ones. And then, yeah. So I thought it really interesting, really useful to do.
Brilliant. I love it. I'm convinced. I'm a convert. So where can people find you? Where can people check out your posts, see what you've been up to, check out some of your wardrobe tracking?
Yeah, I'm Judith Rosalind. My posts from last year, the 15th of January, which was about my buying for the year and the rule of 5. And then I did my posts on the 4 different quarters were on the 2nd of April, the 1st of July, the 1st of October and the 2nd of January. So that's where I did photos of the top 10 garments each quarter, and then just put some ideas and thoughts down.
Wonderful.
I just remembered that when I got inspired to do wardrobe tracking from Wendy at the beginning of the year, wardrobe tracking was trending at the time. It was a thing that a lot of people were doing. And there was an article in British Vogue on the 21st of January by Emily Chan about it. And Wendy's got that linked in her bio. I found that was really interesting.
Awesome. I'll link to that as well. Wonderful.
It was called Forget Fitness Tracking, Wardrobe Tracking is All the Rage. Yeah.
Okay, well, you're continuing the rage and bringing it to the sewing community.
So I'm not going to continue that this year. I'm not going to continue tracking my wardrobe. I'm just building on what I've already.
Yeah, well, you've gained so much knowledge now, haven't you? And without having a completely new set of clothes, would it be that different?
No, it won't be that different. No, I sometimes think when I'm getting dressed in the morning, I think, oh, I'm wearing this. I can't. I should put that in the list, but so I'm still thinking about it.
That's so interesting. Well, it shows that you formed a habit, and I think that's probably key, isn't it, to doing this? It's like you've got to find a way to make it a habit. Like, is it something that you do in conjunction with having a read before bed, or is it something you do after you've cleaned your teeth, or some kind of way you can combine it with something like that?
Yeah, because actually, when I was away a couple of times, and I hadn't put my diary on the side of my bed, on the bedside table, I forgot it. I forgot to do it until the next day.
I think that's it, isn't it? When you're out of your routine.
It was the fact that it was sitting there next to my bed, that made me do it. So although it hadn't become enough of a habit, that I thought, oh, I need to find my diary.
I love it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I hope you have an amazing trip.
Thank you. And thanks very much, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
And I look forward to catching up on your next podcast.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!